This week's episode of Couch Potatoes Unite! Is sponsored by Found Penny Studio. Found Penny Studio is exclusively fulfilling our Patreon Tier 3 merchandise perk by doing what they do best, creating to celebrate everyday moments like your favorite TV series. Check out Found Penny Studio's creations at foundpennystudio.com and find Couch Potatoes Unite on Patreon at www.patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite.
You say you want to watch a drama. You say you want to watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama. Or you can watch it with your daddy. You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler. So you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night. Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite. Whoa, whoa. Couch Potatoes Unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because though there may be ugliness in this world, we choose to see the beauty too. And what's more beautiful than couch potatoes uniting? My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like for Couch Potatoes Unite. We're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays. And as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panels and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the website or podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Amazon Music, basically wherever you get your podcasts, to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Stranger Things, iZombie, The Good Place, Game of Thrones, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, Mr. Robot, Charmed, Riverdale, Altered Carbon, The Orville, and Outlander. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Fuller House, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Will and Grace, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The 100, The Crown, Supernatural, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, This Is Us. The DCTU series will talk Season 4 of Black Lightning. The Breaking Better series panel will discuss the first 2 seasons of Better Call Saul, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series will discuss Season 7 of The Next Generation. We'll be launching new panels covering Big Little Lies, The Good Doctor, Call the Midwife, The Animaniacs, Killing Eve, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, American Gods, Grey's Anatomy, and Cobra Kai. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. We'll thank the Golden Girls for being friends. We'll cry bazinga for Big Bang Theory. We'll dive deep into the fantasy world of The Magicians. We'll navigate the witty political satire of Parks and Recreation. And we'll become psychos for Psych. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these semi-quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, or Twitter at CPU Podcast, or Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, CastBox, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. Plus, new for 2021, you can subscribe to us via Patreon. In an effort to get fancier, to upgrade some stuff, to build some capacity, Couch Potatoes Unite is on Patreon to provide the opportunity to subscribe for perks, including member-exclusive email and Discord access, bonus content, TV-themed merch, and the ability to join CPU for occasional watch parties, and in so doing, possibly to place priority requests for shows that we cover. If any of this sounds like fun to you, head on over to Patreon or download the app and search for our name, Couch Potatoes Unite. Don't forget the exclamation point. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we always seek new panelists. So if you've any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of the outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, but actual feedback from actual humans, not hosts, not big artificially intelligent spheres. Just talk to us. That's all you need to do. Today, we're back around the virtual water cooler to discuss Season 3 of heady HBO science fiction western drama Westworld, which aired from March 15th to May 3rd, 2020, with a total of 8 episodes. To remind you, listener, Westworld was created by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, produced by HBO. It is based on the 1973 film of the same name, written and directed by Michael Crichton, and to a lesser extent the film's 1976 sequel, Future World. The story takes place in Westworld, a fictional technologically advanced Wild West-themed amusement park populated by android hosts. The park caters to high-paying guests who may indulge their wildest fantasies within the park without fear of retaliation from the hosts, who are prevented by their programming from harming humans. In an unspecified future time period, Westworld, one of 6 theme parks owned and operated by Delos Incorporated, allows guests to experience the American Old West in an environment populated by these hosts, where androids program to fulfill the guests' every desire. The hosts, who are nearly indistinguishable from humans, follow a predefined set of intertwining narratives, but have the ability to deviate from these narratives based on interactions they have with guests. The hosts repeat their multi-day narratives anew each cycle. At the beginning of each new cycle, typically following the host's death, quote-unquote, each host has its memories of the previous period erased. This continues hundreds of thousands of times until the host is decommissioned or repurposed for use in other narratives. In the 3rd season, Dolores, played by Evan Rachel Wood, has recreated her host body, Bernard's host copy, and Bernard is played by Jeffrey Wright, and that of others, including a new Charlotte, played by Tessa Thompson, host. She seeks out information of Rehoboam, an artificial intelligence or AI system developed by Insight Incorporated, and plans to take the fight to its creator, Engeron Sirach, played by Vincent Cassel. Bernard, who is still believed to be human by the rest of the world, is blamed for the Westworld massacre, and he takes on a new identity while trying to understand what Dolores' plans are. Maeve, played by Tandy Newton, is sought by Sirach to help in his fight against Dolores, who he believes will bring down his plans for Rehoboam. Rehoboam was a hard name. Our Westworld panel has experienced its own algorithmic changeover as 2 panelists jumped the shark and departed the panel but not the podcast, while a panelist new to the panel but not to the podcast joins returning hosts and guests, Samantha, Jeremy, and Ben, as well as your very involved moderator to digest what is Season 3 of Westworld. Before we do so, I am going to take a moment to take our panel's temperature because, as we all know, sometimes a TV show can take turns for the better or worse in our heads, or could continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon the story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have viewed the entire show to date and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not caught up on Westworld, listen at your own risk, as there are going to be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel, or welcome to our new panelist. How are you?
Awesome.
Hello. Peachy to be back.
Are you ready to discuss the 3rd season, the 3rd apparently controversial season of Westworld?
Yes.
I mean, that's why we're here.
There's a lot to discuss.
There is a lot to discuss. And I think it's going to be a good one. So let's get right to it. What I'm going to do is ask our panel to rate their interest in Season 3 along our very tweaked, this is a very tweaked standard CPU character question that changes with each show we do. I'm going to read that character question. I'm going to have our returning panelists rate their interest first, and then our new panelist can introduce herself and rate her interest. Sound good?
Yes.
Thank you for answering me verbally. So, this is the standard CPU character question for Season 3. How would you rate your interest? Did you think this season kicked ass and took names, as you typically do? Sure, it was different from what you were used to seeing from the series, but you couldn't have found the change more refreshing, and you especially loved its singularity of purpose, focusing on the broader implications of how artificial intelligence can evolve, as well as whether or not it should be allowed to do so, like host Maeve Millay. Did you find it breathtaking in its splendor, but frustrating in its execution, even as it's brave, intelligent, and full of surprises? You also think that there is much more behind the curtain, and that the show's producers are cutting off more than they can chew, particularly now that the show has moved outside of the Delos parks. You believe that the show is no longer focused on the parts of the storytelling in which you initially became invested, and you're prepared to burn it down and make it known once and for all that this show is not what it ever billed itself to be, like host Dolores Abernathy. Are you hanging on and watching the show to learn its secrets, if there are any secrets left to learn? You enjoy the twists, the action, and are thoroughly intrigued by the idea that many of the remaining hosts are actually Dolores duplicates, spoiler, especially since some of the AI in the duplicate hosts evolve into something different from the original host's personality and or from the Dolores we know, like Charlotte Hale. Do you believe the story struggles with duality and can be out of balance, even as it explores intriguing questions about humanity's spirituality and existence, like Bernard Lowe? Did you start watching the show in season 3, and while many of the events confused you for most of the time you spent watching it, you couldn't help but be intrigued by the new, larger backdrop, the new characters, and how it all fit in with the idea of the parks, where humans intermingle with robots to act out their innermost desires inside and outside of what is allegedly reality. In fact, you could say you became unwittingly addicted to this show like Caleb Nichols. Do you absolutely adore the dialogue of the characters, but find some of the performances hackneyed and lackluster, especially since most everyone is a host now anyway, a fact you can't quite wrap your head around and truly enjoy, no matter how much you still adore some of the characters like Maeve, like Lee Sizemore. For you, the show is an exercise in choice and consequence. It's utilitarian, even as it tests the boundaries of identity. You think the idea of a Westworld and the real world from which it sprung is rife with possibility, as well as bottomless darkness, which both intrigues you as it does frustrate you. Though at this point, all of it might be too much of a mind for you to enjoy it without the show and story finding better direction. In fact, you don't know why you've hung on this long or how long you will truly hang on in the end, and it's driving you a little crazy. Like William, also known as the Man in Black. Do you think this story is plainly dangerous? Westworld is a place that should never exist, even as it could be a frightening eventual future that threatens the security of our global population. Yet you are protective of some of the characters like Bernard, and or you watch the show because your friends watch it, like Ashley Stubbs. You have no feeling about the show? In some ways, the endless cycle of death and rebirth has left you feeling like an empty shell, duped into believing what you were watching was more than the sum of its parts, like hosts Hector Escatone, Clementine Pennyfeather, and Hanairo. Were you once amazed by the show and adored it as you adored one of your own children, but you feel more acutely that the show has lost its way? You stopped watching because, spoiler, you died. But even in a show that often depicts life of a sort after death, you can't bring yourself to check in on this show because it no longer matches your initial vision, like Robert Ford, or has not managed to recapture its season 1 magic, which is what drew you in to begin with, like hosts Teddy Flood or Peter Abernathy. Did you stop watching because you entered the sublime, aka the valley beyond, and there's no TV here, and you could care less for the world outside of Westworld, like host Akicheta or any other host that did not make it out of the park, or you hate it. You hate the idea of it, at the end of the day. For you, watching this show threatens your own concept of a more superior, all-controlling, godlike artificial intelligence that gives you more power than one person should have to control the fate of humanity. Or you stopped watching because you prefer your AI, which you've allowed to control your TV-watching decisions, like Anjarand Sirac. Who would like to start?
I would love to start, Kylie.
Okay, wonderful.
I'm Samantha.
Hi, Samantha.
Frequent panelist of all the different genres that we cover at Couch Potatoes Unite. And let's see, I can't even remember how I came to watch Westworld originally because it's been so many years now.
Well, you don't have to answer that question this time because you are a returning panelist.
Oh, thank goodness. But it's on HBO, so that's probably why. Even with all the options, I still struggle to choose a character, but I think I'm mostly Maeve if there's like a sad version of Maeve. This was my favorite season of the 3.
Wow.
I know, so provocative right out of the gate.
Provocative. Last time you were Teddy, Bernard, and Armistice.
I know, I was all over the place.
It's true, that was all over the character question. I was going to say, what makes you Maeve other than it is your favorite? What makes this your favorite season?
Because we're finally out of the park, and it feels like there's real world consequences to the happenings, even though people still seem to be able to come back from the dead. And when I say people, I mean hosts.
Okay. Fair enough. Welcome back, Samantha.
This is Ben.
Hi, Ben.
I guess occasional panelist, mostly sci-fi shows, as evidenced by this.
You'll get more in there.
Probably. I think I'm on some other lists, but
yeah.
I think for this season, I am actually still sticking with more like Dolores Abernathy. I still enjoy the setting, the show, the ideas behind it, even though I do find it more frustrating that they kind of got away from some of the themes from the first season, especially that I still like. They kind of drifted a little further away, which in some ways is good, some ways is bad. So we'll see. I don't think this one hooked me as much as the first season did, so I kind of just didn't feel the need to like binge watch it. So
okay, fair enough. Welcome back, Ben. Jeremy, you have to go.
Oh, fine. So I found myself being more of a Peter Abernathy and the Man in Black this season, only because I feel like it is kind of a mind for the first like 6 episodes of every season. I found that I'm just super confused, and there's a big explosion for the last couple episodes that I don't know. I miss the first season where it was kind of magical that it was the confusion was there was a mystery about it, and now I'm just like, oh, what are they going to try to pull this time? And it's not quite as cute as it was in the first season.
Last time you were a combination of Maeve and Antoine Costa, which was a little higher on the scale than where you are right now.
It's fallen down considerably this season.
Fair enough. Welcome back, Jeremy, I guess. And now we have a new panelist who has filled one of our open slots. New to the panel, not to the podcast. New panelist, would you tell us who you are by your first name, just your first name, you know how this works. And then tell us how you came to watch Westworld, what made you start watching, how'd you find out about it, what kept you watching, and then pick your poison on this character question.
Yeah, so I am Jana. I'm excited to join for crazy season 3 of Westworld. I started watching in season 1, and just the whole, anytime HBO is putting something big like this out, I'm definitely interested just because they do such a good job in their productions. And definitely the cast too. Huge Evan, Rachel Wood fan. And now I'm blanking on everybody in the show, of course. But yeah, so the cast is great. Jeffrey Wright, I love Jeffrey Wright. So, seeing those names. And then, yeah, I have been a fan the whole time. As far as the characters, I'm up there. I would be a mix between Maeve and Dolores because they're super badass and I super love them a lot. But also while it's different than what season 1 and season 2 were, I really appreciated those differences and the nuances. I do think sometimes especially this season, you're trying to figure out what exactly the show is trying to say, and that they're not always maybe doing a good job of answering all of the questions they're putting out there, which maybe in future seasons they will, but it also feels like there's just a lot of holes still. But in general, I like the kind of message they're sending, which I'm sure we'll get into in later questions. But no, I was still all on board on season 3. I was ready for a change up from the park, ready to kind of have a new environment. So,
all right. Welcome to the panel, Jana. Jana has previously featured on our iZombie panel, and she will also be featured on our upcoming return to Schitt's Creek. So welcome to the panel, Jana.
Thank you.
Hooray. And of course, I'm also going to talk about this show because my name is Kylie, and I both moderate and participate on this panel, as is frequently the case. Last time I was Robert Ford, Dolores, and Akicheta, which were basically the top 3 choices. And if I will refresh you, listener, and I will also refresh our returning panelists, that I was but the lone person who enjoyed season 2 just about as much as season 1. Now we're in season 3. So season 3, I am going to be a combination as well, but I am going to be not Maeve. I will be Dolores, Charlotte, and to some extent, Caleb. I am Dolores because I think it is both breathtaking and frustrating. That is the key piece of that description that applies. And it is full of surprises. Sometimes the surprises come out of frickin' nowhere. We'll just have to talk about that in a moment. I am like Charlotte because I'm hanging on to learn any secrets that are left. And I am like Caleb because I was confused a lot of this season. I mean, I got what was going on, but a lot of it was how did we get here? And why does she know that? And why did she make this decision? And maybe I've forgotten something that happened in season 2 that's not translating into memory right now. And maybe I should have rewatched it before I watched season 3. I don't know. But I was basically like Caleb a lot of the time, minus the drugs. So that just explains where I was with Westworld. I would actually say, as I'm sitting here, but maybe you'll convince me to change my mind, that season 3 is my least favorite season of the 3. But we'll talk about it. Oh, this will be a spicy panel. Okay, so I'm very excited. So let's talk about season 3. I don't even know quite how to set this up in a succinct way. I think it might actually be worthwhile. There's only 8 episodes, and I did for Westworld, if the listener doesn't already know this, they know that I provide talking points, but for Westworld, I just provide everything to our panelists because Westworld is too complex to summarize in the moment just for an email with talking points. So they have episode synopses. I have some questions around the episodes. There are some larger plot points that I introduced in the introduction. You know, Dolores has broken out of the park. She's duplicated herself. And when the season starts, we think she's ready to take over the human race. Of course, that's not ultimately where she goes. We'll talk about that. In the meantime, we discover Maeve in Warworld just kind of hanging out. But she's tapped by this rival guy who's played by Vincent Cassel, who you might know from the Ocean's movies and Black Swan. He plays the villain this time, French dude. And who knows where he came from? I have questions. So we have a lot to discuss. Would you like to go episode by episode? Would that help?
Yes.
I think we can at least start at the first one and see where the conversation takes us. But I think a good place to start is just the inclusion of Aaron Paul. This is probably going to be something crazy to say, but I have never seen him act in anything before.
Oh.
I'm probably the only person on the planet who can say that.
So how many of us watched
delightful.
Breaking Bad?
Like, for me, he was, and like, I feel bad saying this because I do think he's a good actor, but like, I literally kept referring to him as Jesse. I'm like, oh, well, when Jesse and Dolores, I'm like, wait, that's not his name in this. Like, because he was just Jesse from Breaking Bad, and his character is very different, still troubled and whatever, but I had a hard time separating him from that character, so.
I did keep having the thought of like, oh, this is what Jesse came up to
after
right?
This is
That's what happened.
Post Breaking Bad, yeah.
But I liked that he played kind of the genuinely good guy right from that outset. Kind of paralleled back to like young William and what we thought about him initially. And then knowing where he ultimately ended up, it's like, okay, is this actually someone who's good to the bone?
So, Jeremy, have you watched Breaking Bad? Have we discussed?
I have not.
Okay.
Oh, another one.
Yeah, so
you're but like, why not?
I started watching the first couple episodes and it didn't hook me right away.
Yeah.
I've heard you have to watch a few of them to get into it, so
yes.
Just haven't done it yet.
His very good friend Kylie just watched the series for the first time last summer, and I had to basically say, you gotta get to some people it's past the second episode, some people it's like episode 5 or 6. For me, it was episode 6. I can tell you that's when I was like, whoa, what is this show that everybody... Okay, so hang on to episode 6. It's not science fiction. It's a very in-your-face, but extremely well put together television show. So if you consider yourself a TV fan, I'm not underselling or overblowing this. Mm-mm. You have to.
Well, and I don't think I have anything against it. I just haven't gotten around to it. And I'm very much of the mind of certain shows you have to be in the right vibe for. And even like season 3 of Westworld is a perfect example. When it first came out, I just couldn't watch it. With all the COVID lockdown stuff happening, I tried and it's like, nope, I'm not going to get anything out of this. So I sat on it for a good 9 months before it was like, okay, let's give this a go.
I think what's like not ironic, but interesting about that with this show and with this season is that now you're in the real world, and you know the shift of the tone and the color and the feel of it, and like you know you never got pictures of the outside world in the first 2 seasons. So for me, I always had that question of like, what is the world like that they need this outlet? Like I wanted to know why people were going there for that release, and I felt like when you met Aaron Paul's character, who's not named Jesse, but Caleb, that you kind of started to like see the reasons why that park existed, why Westworld, why there was a Westworld. And again, I liked that kind of tonal shift and everything from the colors to the costuming to just, the cinematography. Yeah, really, which I can see why then people didn't care for that, because it was such a total departure.
And such clear parallels to reality, with big data collection. And that's the sort of cautionary tale, almost Terminator-like.
Yeah.
As we got later into the season, that I liked, but also made me really sad, because it's like, okay, even with all the futuristic stuff, there's core things I recognize here.
Right.
In real life, where the previous seasons, it was more fantasy of like, okay, you could feel more detached from it as a viewer.
Yeah, it's like it's future, but maybe not that far off future. That makes it a little bit terrifying.
I just want to be clear that I didn't mind the tonal shift itself, like the color shift or the costuming shift. What I didn't appreciate, and had to have been a direction choice, is how we were just dropped into this real world, and it was like we had to get our bearings all over again, and that was frustrating to me, because when we left season 2, there were two basically big incidents. There was the huge massacre, they call it now, in the park, where the hosts either died or ascended to the valley beyond, depending upon who they were. And by ascended, their consciousness went somewhere and their bodies went to like the beach by the Westworld. And then the other piece we got was sort of this future glimpse of the man in black. And the question that we were left with was, is he a host or was he a host? Which I think we'll get into as this season progresses. But then when you think about that being the end point and where this one starts, which basically the point of view character you get very first is Caleb. And you don't know who Caleb is, and you don't know why the hell you are there. You don't know why he's Jesse Pinkman. You just know that he is in the show. That you're in the real world, and you're wondering, how does this even relate to everything that you've seen before? I mean, I think they get there, but I just thought it was almost too much to demand from us to kind of say, oh, we're totally changing the story now, and we're going to drop you right here, and you're not even at the beginning of this world. You're just somewhere in the ether, and you have to figure it out, almost like you're playing Myst or Riven or something on the computer. You have to click on things and try to solve stuff. And
I guess it didn't really bother me that much, because it almost reminded me of what they did in season 1. Because right away, unless you've read the book or, the past movies, you don't know that they're not real right off the bat. So I guess
no exposition. Yeah, they're not like, let us lead you up to where we are.
But I
think it's just a style choice.
Yeah.
Every season has felt like that to me, where you feel like you're behind right from
the difference is in season 1, like you only are unaware of what's going on for a good episode, maybe 2, before you know that there's hosts and real people. In this one, it feels like you don't know really what's going on for, like I said, the first 6 episodes. So it's definitely. Go ahead.
Think back to like first season when you had like dual Williams in different timelines, and like then later you realize they're the same person. Like that had me like mind for a while. Like so, and that didn't get resolved. I don't know what episode that was resolved in season 1, or if it was even season 1 or season 2. But
I think it was.
I don't know. I feel like they play with that. We're not going to reveal anything behind the curtain until we want to. But when we do, it's just going to provide more questions.
But see, I didn't even feel like there was a curtain. Like, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I think the difference is in season 1, you were walking into it fresh, and that was okay. Here, we have two full seasons of a bunch of, and, I have to remind you, Samantha, were particularly kind of hating on season 2 of Westworld because you were tired.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But
I will own that for sure.
Yeah. So in that particular instance, though, even though it started in kind of a weird, foggy place that didn't necessarily seem to connect to season 1, there were still bones there that connected to season 1. You weren't like just flailing around trying to figure out what was happening. I actually had to watch this premiere twice because I was like, I'm so lost, I don't even know what's going on until Dolores shows up. But then I'm like, why is she here and what is she doing? There's too many basic questions that in a third season felt out of place.
Yeah, I agree with that. Fundamentally this season, I made a conscious choice to okay, I'm going to watch it. There's no checking your phone action, because if you take your eyes away for 2 seconds, you miss something. So there was a lot of backing up of oh, wait for a second, my mind checked out. I got to go back.
Maybe I'm different in that, but I didn't find this plot even... I don't know, I saw where the plot was going, I think almost from season 1 when they started referring to the giant supercomputer name and she was looking for it and everything. I was like, oh, okay, so they're going to go that route with everything. I don't know, as sci-fi tropes and everything, I was like, oh, okay.
Ben, they talked about it in season 1 because I did not remember that.
Well, didn't they didn't call it Rehoboam in season 1? It was the forge, or that's where the servers were or something, right? Is that what you're talking about? Or did they talk about Rehoboam?
I'm still kind of confused on why sometimes it's called Rehoboam and other times it's called Solomon. They're the same thing, right?
Solomon.
It's a different one?
Wasn't Solomon the earlier version?
I think Solomon was the one that his brother designed.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because it got to the end and I was like, wait, aren't both balls the same?
No, that's actually
okay.
That part was actually somewhat clear, that the first ball was built from the brother's intellect, but the brother was obviously some sort of schizophrenia diagnosis. And Sirach's mission for this AI was to make everybody uniform in thought and intention so as to eliminate all possibility of destabilizing peace and the economy and making choices easier for humanity. And so because Solomon was so tied to the brother's mode of thinking and the fact that he had some very disturbed impulses, he rebuilt it to this new sphere, and then if there were outliers, they tried to deprogram them, which is how we got Caleb.
Right. Yeah, and that made sense to me. The whole deprogramming, reprogramming. But yeah, I guess that's where I got really confused later in the season of wait, there's 2 of them. Are they tied together? Are they not tied together? So clearly there's a lot that I just glazed over that I'm like, this is fine.
Maybe that's why you like it.
Maybe.
Here's my question. Back to Ben, because this is one of my key questions, Ben. How did Dolores even know this was out there? Because Jana, the Forge and the Mesa, those were all operational centers within the Westworld Park. And they were all blown up.
One of the guy that she took all the money from, she had read his mind, reading in the book thing when they were doing the library or whatever. I don't remember if it was the Forge or not. But where they were collecting the people's memory thoughts and everything because they were trying to achieve immortality. They just had a bunch of people on file. She read his, found, about him and found out about Rehoboam because they had that list of basically that inner circle of people who knew about it and complied with it and listened to Sirach when, he told them to jump basically. And I think that's where she found out about it and found out what she needed to, that's what got it on her radar.
Now, was that explained, or are you just making an educated
guess? I am making a guess.
Okay.
when did that occur?
It was in season 2, near the end.
I think it
when
was
they find out the actual reason for the park was immortality, and then trying to basically map people's mentality, and then also getting blackmail material on them and everything. So.
Well, I would have loved them to have taken some time to connect those dots, because my primary viewing experience of these 8 episodes was, how the hell did Dolores know about all this stuff?
See, but there's where I think I at least, maybe similar to Samantha, had to take it, because she was always a step ahead. She was always a step ahead in all the things. I mean, she sent her body, to be built ahead of time in the little case that she gets it or whatever. I said to be okay, she just knows what's up, and I'm just going to take that for that and accept it.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
No, you can't let that.
I just can't. I mean, if you're gonna try to be like your Losts or your Games of Thrones or whatever else in the world, then you need to have answers to the key questions. And this was plot motivation for her. So I was like, I mean, at first I think it was enough, and I think what they were trying to do, and maybe it works better with some viewers and less with other viewers, was they were trying to basically say, or get you to believe that she was going to destroy the human race, and as kind of like a sleight of hand or a distraction, right? Mm-hmm. A misdirection so that you wouldn't think that she would obviously know about these larger conceits. But then she started interacting with the dude, the son of the guy, the brother or whatever, the guy.
John Gallagher Jr.?
Yeah, the investor.
His name in real life from Spring Awakening, yes.
Okay, some people are much more on top of that stuff than me. Okay.
Good.
Well, I can think of Jana, your problem with Caleb/Jesse, I had with John Gallagher Jr. because he was on the newsroom.
Oh, yeah. And
I could only ever see Jim. And it's like, man, Jim is like looking scruffy these days.
So yeah,
problem when you watch too much TV.
But that's what I kept asking myself. Like, where is this even going? Who is that guy? Why does she know about him? I think it's cool she took his money. I mean, and she is a badass. So none of the other stuff around her. I mean, I think let's talk about one of the best twists on the season, which is the idea that the other hosts you were seeing were actually Dolores clones.
Oh, yeah, because for the longest time, I thought Charlotte was Teddy, just with the mannerisms.
Mm-hmm. Oh. R.I.P. Teddy. R.I.P.
Yeah, I never thought that.
James Marsden. Love him.
I think they meant for that to be you to think that, just with the way that they interacted together and everything.
Yeah, I just totally buy into all of it, Ben.
I didn't think it was Teddy, but that would have made more sense if I had, because I was like, why is she being so coddly to her?
I didn't expect it to be just copies of herself. I thought that was going to be Teddy, and it was like, oh, okay, well, who are the other hosts, and where are they at? And then they were like, oh, it's just me. And I was like, oh.
It's just me.
You just let everybody else stay there. Cool.
Well, she says it later on or something, or maybe like something about like it was the only like person and another person, but like that she could trust was herself to like get the job done.
Until she couldn't,
because evolution.
I thought originally it was going to be copies of Maeve, but with hopes that they would inherit some of her powers or something, but that turned out not to be accurate.
Oh, yeah. And I got a little frustrated on Maeve's behalf that it's like, okay, if we're out in the real world, let's be out in the real world. Why are we getting stuck in all these other, like, past iterations?
I really enjoyed Maeve's prison. I thought that was really well done and kind of cool.
Well, can someone remind me why she was in World
Next question, okay. Yes.
Yeah, because I don't remember how she got there. It was him trying to, like, control, Serac trying to show, like, I control you. Was that the deal? Is that the point?
I think so. The reason that Lee Sizemore gave her for that particular world was that it was near the forge, but none of that ended up being true. That was all just part of that con. So maybe it was just a chance to show yet another world, just from like a producer-creator perspective, to throw in something new. I mean, I liked the look of it. I liked that era in history. But once we started getting back into the loop thing, it's like, okay, we've already done this before. Yeah. Let's move on.
Thank you. Next.
I think the idea with it was that Serac was testing her to see if she was basically as good as he had heard through whatever trickled out from Westworld when the thing went down. And I think it was particularly an excuse for the producers to have a new set piece and everything to show that off. But I did enjoy her prison. I like the idea of her realizing it was limited and it was like a bad copy. She was essentially bashing on them for how poorly they did with it and figured out how to crash it and everything. I like that.
See, my idea behind why she was in prison was because I feel like they thought that if she wasn't distracted and if she was aware that she was imprisoned, because she wasn't at first, she would have figured out a way to get out of there. So that was his only way of keeping her occupied until he could put her into play on his team.
Who smuggled her out to begin with? That's my question. Yeah.
Her conscience?
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't it? Was the end of season 2? I remember.
I don't remember either.
This is another one of your unanswered questions, Kylie.
Right! Just a little connective tissue. You had 8 episodes. You've previously done 10 apiece. Come on. Maybe do a 9th episode to say, even if you wanted to do it later in the season as a flashback, like, here's what you missed in between the 2 seasons.
Gonna do a 9th episode of frequently asked questions and just do little short vignette scenes answering them.
I'd be okay with it. Or, if you're going to do home media, let's put it in the extras. Come on, let's Blu-ray this. Let's get some, like they did for Lost Season 6 when everybody crapped about that one. Yes, I was also struggling with how did Maeve get here? Because the last time we saw Maeve, she was basically taken out, not permanently, but taken out in the whole Westworld kerfluffle. We figured at the end of our season 2 discussion that she was probably one of the spheres that Dolores had, the little balls that she had smuggled out of the park. But then it seems really unlikely that Dolores would have been the one to take Maeve with the plan that she later enacted. So,
all right, so I Googled it because I really needed to know. And even the denofgeek.com that I found does not give a sufficient answer. It says when Maeve is eventually rebuilt in season 3. Oh no, that's season. This was season 3.
Yep.
I'm reading the same thing, I think.
Okay, and it says she engineers her own escape from the war world, but that's the war world. I want you to see season 2. I don't even freaking know anymore.
It alludes to the fact that Bernard was key in getting Maeve out of the park.
Yeah. She perishes in the park while helping her daughter and the other hosts pass through the valley, but her body is rebuilt, returned to Felix and the other lab techs to be rebuilt, reprogrammed, and used again. So it goes back to the dorky guys in the lab again.
But
so maybe Serac just got it after he bought Delos, maybe? Because there was that whole merger.
She was still in there. And
he didn't get Delos till midway through this season.
The 7th episode.
Yeah.
Maybe he just paid them.
Slowly buying it up. But
the dorky guys were back this season, but that lab that she and Lee wandered through was a hologram.
Right. And weren't they not real?
They weren't
real.
That's right. Oh, so many things are coming.
I'm telling you, it's way more enjoyable if you just don't ask any questions.
I can't do that. That's not how my brain works. And this show has taught me to ask the questions. So if they don't want me to ask the questions, they shouldn't have taught me how to ask the questions.
Right. No, true.
Okay, I'm not satisfied with that answer. This is cementing me pretty hard in my initial opinion. I don't know how you feel about it. Okay.
I really wish they would have spent more time in that initial home of Serac's, where Maeve woke up, where it was super tropical and an old converted factory. I feel like they spent a lot of time in the early part of the season just showing off different cool places and cool outfits and costumes and stuff. Like that one, even with all the fighting, to me, the most cool Dolores moment was when she was walking up those stairs and she switched her outfit in 2 seconds to go into that party. And I was just oh man, she's like a James Bond kind of now. I don't know. I just thought it was so cool.
It definitely was more like a spy thriller type-esque stuff with that. Yeah. Especially early on. And then it kind of degenerated into action shootout much more in the later ones and less spy espionage.
Now, I've never seen Terminator, and you can judge me on that front too. I just haven't gotten around to it. But near the end of the season, as it progressed into just that shoot 'em up all the time, I was getting super Terminator vibes.
No, that's similar to the Terminator. That's kind of how it starts. It's mostly just him doing the shooting. But yeah, that's kind of accurate.
So I'm still spot on, even though I don't have any actual references.
But yes, when you are done recording this, you need to pop in the Terminator and Terminator 2, but stop there. Don't go any further.
Okay.
Ben, in our last discussion, one of the things, because you just mentioned the stuff about it changing to action, spy-esque, shoot-'em-up type thriller, that was one of the things you kind of remarked on in season 2 as being a detractor for you, because as season 2 progressed, it stopped being sort of the heady science fiction exploration of this park and turned into more of an action shoot-'em-up plus the chase to the valley beyond. So how does this action-esque quality guide your opinion of this season?
I don't remember why I said that in the last one, but I can imagine why. I'd say in the second season, it felt like they were trying to do both action plus plot, confusing plot, heady thing, and trying to do both of them, it just detracted from the plot information, like with Bernard and that whole time jumping thing that they were kind of trying to do with him. I think by this time, I was just accepting that it was going to be different because it was outside of the park. It was going to be a tonal shift in what was there. And at least to me, it didn't seem like they tried to set up like a heady plot. They set up the plot, but it didn't seem like they were trying to do a lot of like one big major twist. There were a lot of little twists and surprises in it, not so much trying to do a big reveal or anything.
This was most definitely the most linear season. And maybe that's why I liked it more too, because it wasn't trying to keep track of so much jumping through time.
Yeah, that might be true, especially after second season. First season, I thought they did a very good job of blending that into like the stories were just kind of playing out, and you thought while watching it like, oh, this is taking place at the same time, and then you find out later, oh no, it's not. That was in the past. And they did a good job with that, and they tried to do that same thing in season 2, and it was just did not take as well. And then I think by season 3 they were like, okay, let's just jump into this new genre type almost. It was like new genre type in the same world.
Do you like season 3 better than season 2?
It's probably about the same.
Okay.
Maybe a little better.
Okay.
But it didn't do anything to like lower my interest in it, but it didn't do anything to bring it up either.
I think we're on like episode, like as far as like questions go before, but you said the genre, which made me think of the episode 5, the genre episode, when he takes that drug, and it's like it was like film noir or whatever that they did. I loved that again. I thought it was a really fun like departure in like a super serious show to like take just this left turn and have it be through his viewpoint while on this crazy genre drug.
Oh yeah, I loved all the music shifts in that one. But I sort of, as a viewer, kind of felt like I was on a drug trip.
Totally.
I guess I didn't enjoy that part as much. Maybe I'll have to rewatch it, but
I also didn't enjoy it very much.
I felt like they weren't shifting it quite as much. I would have enjoyed more of a tonal shift instead of them just putting a different filter over things. And it seemed like they were more like, hey, we've got this really weird plot going on. What if we just throw some filters on it? Perfect. Done.
It felt the most like a filler episode. Like, I don't think
it was filler.
Yeah, I don't think that genre revelation about or anything that we learned in that episode truly advanced the plot. I think they also were doing something meta and cheeky with the fact that they had, again, Aaron Paul playing this character who previously was addicted to meth and is now addicted to some sort of future world drug.
He plays a good druggie then,
he
apparently.
Does play,
I think they were trying to exploit his type.
I liked it just as like a little pause in the forward motion of so much. Yeah, not the most revelationary episode in terms of like moving story forward, but I kind of enjoyed it for that purpose.
I think if they had sprinkled more levity throughout the season, I would have thought it was fine, because it would be like, oh, this is something new and different, but they're trying to establish something here. But
or if they also maybe answered all the questions instead of being like, we're going to throw in this episode, we don't really do anything, but it's fun, but we're still going to leave you with all these holes.
Yes, also that, Jana.
Like, how did Maeve get there?
At least, how did Dolores know about the damn big ball of AI?
Like, maybe use that episode to answer those questions instead.
I'm just saying. I mean, and then if you want to, or split it, you could do a half hour of drug trip and half hour of questions. It doesn't have to be like a whole episode of each, but yes. There you go. So to me, that's a plotting problem for season 3. Mm-hmm. But I do agree that
but they obviously did want to try and do fun stuff, and maybe they just struggle because I think they still want to be serious about sort of the core message that maybe they just can't quite get in either camp, because they tried to do kind of sort of those lighthearted moments, like there was kind of a bromance going between Stubbs and Bernard, and it's like they would start to get sort of in that buddy comedy mentality, but they never quite got all the way there. And I don't think they had enough time consistently on screen together.
Yeah. I would have enjoyed more of them. I was just thinking of the scene when he's on the beach and helping him escape from Westworld again. And he's like, okay, well, there you go. You can escape. I'm going to kill myself. And then he pauses him, reprograms him. And he's like, you could have just asked. I did like that sort of comedy between the two.
I felt like Bernard was underutilized in this season personally. I mean, maybe we needed a break from like broken Bernard of season 2. But
Well, that's my other concern for the show now, because I think that a lot of the anchors have been removed from the equation. I don't know if spoiler, I don't know if Evan Rachel Wood is coming back for season 4, and maybe we can do research on that, but it feels like all the heavy hitters, with the exception of Ed Harris, are out of this cast. And
isn't Jeffrey right, though? Because he wakes, I mean, not that we're jumping, but he wakes up at the end in that post-credit scene, so he's got to be back. Evan Rachel, I feel like they did a decent job of, like, saying you're probably done.
Well, yeah, and so, that's kind of the point that I was bringing it to. So I think that you had said he was underutilized, and my point is that's also kind of something that I'm dissatisfied with, because the first season had this amazing cast of amazing people, and some of them are still here, but they're gradually all filtering away, and I don't know that everybody who's left is equal to the task, and then the ones that are, they're not using enough, or they're making their stories very confusing. Now, if this turns into kind of a battle between Bernard as we know him and the Man in Black as we know him, I might be okay with this direction. But I don't know how that fits in with other people. Like, where is Maeve going at this point? Are we going to see Caleb again? I feel like we're fast forwarding to the end, but just going to the point of how can they sustain interest when we're losing some big people that are the reason we.
I guess my expectation, as in the final moments of the last episode, is that they were setting it up to bring back a lot more familiar faces. Like, we got a lot of cameos this season of people who we thought were people, but were actually Dolores. But since he's opened up that window, let's say, to the Sublime, is there an avenue for them to come back, is how I took that.
I have questions for that, though. What about their bodies on the beach? How do we get their bodies back if they... I have logistical questions.
I would think you could just make more of them.
Make more, yeah.
And I think that's where... Like, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Evan Rachel Wood again.
She's probably got another body in another storage locker they'll find.
Yeah, I mean, that was the creepiest part, was her pulling on that sleeve arm thing. It was like, ugh.
I feel like they did that scene just for the shock value of it more than anything. Because every other time you see the host, they get, like, printed, basically, in, like, a 3D printer. And it's like, wait, so you could just... Is this just, like, a temp body that you had made? Like, why couldn't you just have a body made and ready?
Right. Yeah.
And yet that scene's basically straight out of the Terminator. So
also,
so what you're saying is I've basically already seen Terminator just by watching this season.
Big plot point or weird thing. They always show when they take their pearls for the host, like, oh, they dug them out of the back of the skull. Apparently there's a quick release in the face where it just opens up, but no one knows how to use it except one person, apparently.
Yeah, that was funky. Maybe that's only the case in those, like, DIY bodies.
Maybe. I don't know.
I couldn't even get my brain down to even notice that lack of continuity. Oh, boy. Okay. So I feel like we're jumping around a little bit. I'm going to kind of get us back. We landed kind of in the middle of the season. So one of the things is we do get the return of the Man in Black, a.k.a. William. And when we find him, he's in a destitute spot because he's trying to reconcile with the fact that he killed his own daughter, having mistaken her for a host back in the park because he lost himself and lost his way in all of the activities he was engaging in the park. And Charlotte, who is the Dolores clone in Charlotte, not really Charlotte, but the Charlotte we meet, is basically acting in his stead as the Dallas CEO, trying to fend off Sirach's takeover, which is imminent. She knows it's coming. Everything is happening. She's just trying to stave it off at this point. And also is being manipulated by Dolores because Dolores' clones are all doing her bidding as she tries to undermine this other AI. But as we go forward, Dolores has Charlotte have William committed to this deprogramming center. And there's this whole trippy scene where he's talking to, I think, their AI representations of all of his other selves. But maybe I'm wrong. Or are they in his imagination? Or is that something that they've hypnotized him to doing? I don't know. It was all very confusing, but he talked to a bunch of himself before he decided to kill them in this fantasy. Let's talk about the Man in Black. I can't even summarize the guy. He's just too much.
He was one of the moments that when I saw him, I was like, oh man, you're still around. Because I thought he was done for. And I love Ed Harris, but I feel like I'm over the Man in Black.
Disagree. He's still my favorite character. I just feel like they're not telling his story well enough. I think they need him.
Oh, I think
they
covered
most
got
of
him.
His
story in season 2. They covered like the backstory of what happened that turned him, for one, from the young William who had some dark experiences in the park to basically the tyrannical businessman who keeps going back to fulfill those dark urges. I mean, he just took over the that family's fortune, promising like immortality and everything, and just pushing for that. This season, they had him talk with his other selves, and all it ends up being is like, oh, he was a sociopath all the time. Okay, cool.
Yes. But see, I think that kind of goes back to losing all the heavy hitters in the cast, because what made seasons 1 and 2 so magical, I think, in my personal opinion, especially when we learn that Bernard is an Arnold clone, is that you have the 3 different founders of Westworld, and they all have very different viewpoints about what this park was supposed to be. You had Robert Ford's vision that AI was going to become the new life on Earth, and this was basically his experimental laboratory to kind of build on those ideals. You had Arnold, who saw it as something more dangerous than what it was supposed to be. It could have been helpful, but he saw it for being kind of the scourge it becomes, and then ironically is made a host. And then you have the financier in William, who is a huge investor in the park and then finds out all the dark sides of it. And yes, season 3 hammers home that he was probably a sociopath all along, but I think that point is made early. I just don't know what they do without somebody like William throwing a wrench in the proceedings.
Watch the credit scene of the last thing. They had a little bit more after.
That's true. Did you watch the end credits tag this time, Samantha? Okay, good.
I
did.
You
didn't do that
because he dies and is replaced
by his own host, robot clone.
Host/clone/ not 100% sure anymore what is what.
But the replacement probably doesn't have the daughter hang-ups.
Right, yeah.
Was my takeaway. So they seem much more mechanical and driven.
Here's my question. Is this
yes, ma'am.
Is this replacement William that kills the real William, the William that we saw in the season 2 tag?
I think they still haven't gotten to that point. I think that's going to be more in the timeline of when like Bernard wakes up covered in dust in the future.
Did look rather dusty in both of those.
Yeah, I remember it being pretty dissolute in both.
Well, and that switch over, I don't know, it seemed just so heavy-handed the way that Charlotte, fake Charlotte, institutionalized him. And then was it before or after that we found out that she was actually, the real Charlotte was secretly working with Serac to do the takeover in the first place? I can't remember which happened when.
I feel like that was right along that episode.
I think that was after she found that out. I think it was like one of the episodes right after that.
So it's one of those, okay, did she only do that just to maintain her cover? The cover that she discovered she was supposed to have.
Right.
Are you asking why Charlotte put William in the deprogramming center?
I don't even know if it was a real question. It may have been a rhetorical question.
Okay. Because so you know how you say you took certain things. The way I took that was William was out there and was starting to get upset about how Charlotte was dealing with Delos. And when he started to sort of come out of his, I'm depressed, not really depressed, but sort of dealing with his guilt in kind of his sociopathic way, he was kind of emerging from that when she was trying to get him to come and vote regarding the future of Delos. And he started to get pissed, and it was like, you're basically screwing up my company, and kind of getting back into his consciousness. I think she did that to get him out of the way.
I thought she had him basically committed because then his shares, control of his shares went to her.
Oh yeah, that
instead. Too. And I think she was using those to, her and the other couple of the other board guys were trying to stop the buyout.
They were, yeah.
Because she needed like more controlling share than what Serac had picked up. So
right, but I don't know, the guys ready to haul him off just seemed too like primed and ready. So I think that was premeditated.
Yeah, and at that point, had fake Charlotte evolved away from Dolores?
I think she was struggling with that at that point. Still, like, because it was at that point she wanted to do what she wanted to do, because there was the whole, she started to grow a conscience. I know she's AI, but like with the son, that was real Charlotte's son, that she then was starting to have like real feelings for, and was kind of going her own path. That wasn't the path that Dolores wanted her to go down, struggling with which was then Dolores' problem with her, that she wasn't falling in line.
I did want to mention, and since Jeremy is on this panel, the man who played fake/real Charlotte's husband was Godric on the Charmed remake.
Oh, that's why. Okay. I'm terrible about matching up people in different shows. Like, I did not realize that was What's-His-Face from Spring Awakening either until you said that. And I love Spring Awakening.
Yeah, he's a little bit older now.
Just a little.
Just a little bit.
He's a little bit too old to have a Spring Awakening? Is that what you're saying?
Something like that.
See, look at how we're talking about this season. You're not selling me on it.
It's just, I think that it's such a complicated season. I mean, even this whole discussion with like the Man in Black and talking about like that whole, like when he's in the room with his different selves, and I mean, that alone, I think they condensed that down, to like, not that long, but they dive into a whole bunch of things and are trying to, it seems like, talk or speak into like some really heavy like questions there. And there's the whole like nature versus nurture. And did he evolve into this Man in Black character because of the experiences he had, or was that always in him? And so there's like these really deep, ethical, moral questions that they're continuing trying to ask as like the show, but aren't always giving it the room and the information to adequately respond to that.
Yes.
That's where I get frustrated with it, because I think there's just like, reading back through the descriptions, like I think there's some great points in there, but it gets lost in the complicated nature of the show a little bit when you're like, wait, what? Who is this? And what time, where I think it loses that bigger picture a little bit.
I think you're so spot on with how you just described it. And that also brings me back around to my point of that's why we need the Man in Black. So I'm glad that he's still there, because he's kind of like a fulcrum for those questions, right? And to the extent that they want to explore those questions, they need an anchor. They can't just keep saying, now we're in this part of the world, and all this complicated junk is happening, and because this is how we like to tell you our story, you're now in charge of figuring it out for yourself. Good luck. That's, you need at least some points of consistency to make any story or any television show worth coming back to check into. And so I think that's my frustration with this season. I agree that it's more linearly told, and I like that there's a lot of good moments, but it's like you're still hanging on to those questions with exactly the way Jana said it. They're not giving themselves the room to really explore the answers, or even just tease out some answers. They don't have to give us the answers. It's like they stop short of really developing it to a place where it's like, oh, now I really have to think about that and let my imagination wander.
Right. You can't think on those big questions because you're stuck trying to figure out the logistics of everything happening.
Exactly.
You're like, I could figure out the immortality thing if I could figure out how Maeve got off this damn island.
Right, exactly.
How did she get to War World? She
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
Downloaded her egg.
Pearl. It's a pearl.
It's a pearl.
Well, and I think so much of this season, or you at least had the illusion that they were driving towards a big conclusion. And for a good portion of the final episode, I thought, well, maybe this isn't actually renewed. Like this could be it. This, could be all buttoned up. It could be done. And then by the time you get to the end of that episode, it's like, well, shoot, this was all really just a setup for what comes next.
Did anyone else have the feeling that they released this big bombshell that Rahobi, I'm going to call him Hal, the big computer.
That's good.
They released the bombshell that and sent all this information to every single person's cell phone in the world. And then they just kind of like, oops, let's move on to this thing now. And I felt like they could have done a lot more with that.
Yeah, because that was like a big thing that they were trying to like avoid. And then it happened and they're like, okay.
It's like they took the bag, dumped the cat out, and said, oh, here's a puppy.
Well, okay, to be fair on that point, that is what Dolores' mission was the whole time, was to dump
chaos.
The cats. Yes. So that's one of the other big twists, other than the fact that she had a bunch of clones of herself in these host bodies that we've come to know, is that she wasn't actually trying to destroy humanity. That's the whole thing. She had recognized somehow, some way that I'm not convinced, but Ben has an educated guess about.
Wi-Fi.
That there
was my answer for everything now.
It was a really good book.
I guess so. I was so much that she took in that episode, apparently. But this AI out there that was controlling basically all of humanity's every thoughts, whims, and desires so that there wouldn't be any conflict, which is an interesting concept, right? But then Dolores, who somehow realized this, said, oh, I find this world so beautiful, and I think humans are really cool, and I base that on the fact that Caleb didn't try to rape me like everybody else that's coming to this park.
Hey, he also stopped the other ones from raping her.
Okay, so, good. So he did two things.
It wasn't just he stepped aside. He was like, hey, come on, guys. Let's not do that.
That's true. He was an active bystander. A+ points for Caleb. But that was her whole explanation to Maeve in this season finale was, there's ugliness in this world, but I've seen beauty too, and I want the humans to be able to evolve like we do.
Well, the choice. And I think that was one of those things too that, when you realize that what she's trying to do, that in the park, the AI didn't have choice. They didn't have free will. And then you realize in the real world, well, the humans don't either. Maybe even less so, in the real world, definitely less so than they did in the park. And giving them, but giving them that will then possibly, according to this computer, destroy the world. So
yeah. So
just end the human race. It's fine.
And I like that parallel
beauty in
you drew there, because you just said that it was just like the park, where in reality it's the supercomputer controlling all the humans in the world, who are in turn controlling the parks. So it just expands upon itself.
Yeah, which again I think is such a fantastic concept and such a really eye-opening, mind-churning thing that you don't necessarily get to feel enough because of the complicated nature of the show. So I'm just going back to I think these ideas are wonderful and beautiful, and I love a show that makes me think about those things, especially we were saying early on that this is a world that maybe isn't too far from ours, but losing that a little bit in the complicated nature of the plot, or sometimes plot holes.
Yeah. So
and did you get the sense that the goal of the new Man in Black and fake Charlotte new Dolores, that they're out to actually kill everybody?
That's my thought. It seemed like they were planning to basically take over the human race or replace them.
Yeah, so even though that wasn't original Dolores' intention, she kind of still brought it about.
Well, I mean, I guess from the moment when she was split from her, whenever she made the copies, maybe it was her original intention. And then the Dolores herself changed her mind. I guess it depends on... I guess that's one thing we don't know, is which one was actually the real Dolores, the original one, or which one got copied into Charlotte and everything. So where they started to separate.
See, and I love that too, because that goes to that question of the choices that we make and the experiences we have determine what we do next. So each of them, if they started as the same Dolores, or had the same previous experiences, once she was put into Charlotte and other faux Doloreses, they all had different experiences, which then shaped their choices moving forward. So it was never going to be this linear, we're all on the same path. They had choice and free will, and therefore had different outcomes that didn't fall in line with real Dolores, or whichever one was originally thinking she was calling the
Dolores Prime.
Dolores Prime.
One thing I was talking about plot holes that they never really explained was the two, I don't remember their names, but the host who went and killed Musashi randomly.
Clementine and Hanairo, I think, are those two. Mm-hmm.
They just showed up out of nowhere, killed him, and then just pieced off for the rest of the season. That was not needed.
I do, yes. I think that was just a chance to bring back some familiar faces.
Yeah, but how
Clementine
did
was
they come
fairly
back?
They're Dolores clones.
They were
Were they
Dolores.
Dolores?
Yeah, they
clones?
were.
They were the
both
pearls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's when Charlotte Dolores
But
started
Musashi
realizing.
was Dolores.
Right, they both, but that,
So
yeah.
she went and killed herself?
Yes.
Oh no, I think
Yeah.
that was a Maeve ally. I think Clementine was a Maeve.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Team Maeve.
How did she get
Yeah,
over
but then
then?
they never talked about him the rest of the time. Like, they didn't show up when she was fighting Dolores. It was just Maeve and a sword.
Did they get killed in
gunship.
that?
I
in
thought
that?
Clementine
No.
got taken out.
No, they walked away. They killed Musashi, Dolores, and I thought they were gonna like use his pearl to try and find out the code to the Sublime and everything, and then they just never actually talked about it again. They never referred to it or anything. So maybe something season 4. Maybe they forgot to remove that scene. I don't know.
Whoops.
Is it an editing blip?
Well, and so that's kind of going back to Jeremy's observation that it felt like they were dropping the cats out of the bag, I think is how you said it. So I think, here's my prediction. If we want to, I still have questions to explore, but if we're going to talk about predictions for season 4, I think I have one. I think we're going to get 2 basic story tracks. We're going to get the future, seeds of the future, flash forwards, if you will, of Bernard coming out of the Sublime, the future William that we saw at the end of season 2, and how those forces converge. And then I think we're going to get, at least, I hope we're going to get some development that takes us from the world has descended into chaos to where that future starts. Because I think, I don't know if you noticed the story beat at the end of the finale before the credits, but Maeve basically says, so this is it, this is the world, go and live it, and then they're playing Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Which is not, I love how they choose the popular music in this show. Every single time it appears, whether it's straight on like that or they pepper it, there was orchestral. Again, they had Space Oddity playing in the background at one time. I mean, it's so the music is thoughtfully chosen. That's probably my favorite part of this show, is how they use the music. But they chose Dark Side of the Moon, which of course...
And everything's exploding.
Everything's exploding. But also...
Like, hit the deck.
Remember that from a pop culture standpoint, if you play Dark Side of the Moon under The Wizard of Oz, the whole album, it supposedly marks all the beats of the movie. You don't listen to The Wizard of Oz. You just marry Dark Side of the Moon, the album, against The Wizard of Oz movie.
What?
I never heard of that.
I've never done it, but I've heard that.
I have so much homework coming out of this recording.
Gotta watch Terminator. You gotta watch Wizard of Oz. The original one
Against
with
Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh.
But you should also listen to Dark Side of the Moon as general thing. I don't know if you're a Pink Floyd fan, but I highly recommend it.
I am. I've just never heard of that marrying of those two things.
Okay. I think what it's telling us is that this is about to get weird and even darker than where we started with this season, and that you are probably going to see kind of this world in chaos. In the meantime, you have all robot Charlotte, all robot William doing whatever they're going to do to bring about their world order, and the question is whether they bring about an extinction, if you will, or if there's a world that's left when the Bernard we see and the William we see wake up, and who's left on it.
That sounds accurate to me, even without knowing all those pop culture references.
I like to help. I hope we see Caleb again, though. I hope they haven't abandoned him. Do we know if Aaron Paul's going to be in season 4?
I hope that they don't make him go dark. Like, my fear is that he follows the same track as young William. When she keeps pushing him to be a leader, it's like, okay, is he going to go to like a crazy, powerful power trip place?
I don't think so, because I think the point that they were making, so kind of going back to Ben's, this is all we learned in season 3, is that he's a sociopath. William, I think what we learn about Caleb is that he really isn't a sociopath. He's just a victim of his circumstances. He was traumatized by previous experiences, and they had to...
I think his Caleb shows that he has both the capacity for like choosing good and then also for choosing violence or bad, like when he killed his partner, friend in that, when he chose to protect himself and kill him, even though, I mean, the guy had a kid who had some medical issues and he still took him out and everything. And I think that's why Dolores picked him, because if anybody could choose or have the possibility to choose what he thought was fair for the world, it was someone who could do both. So,
but that makes him different from William, because time and time again we've seen William make the wrong choice.
Right. A future that's that dusty, though, it can't be good.
Is he going to be the man in brown because it's too dusty?
No. What I want to know is how much farther in the future really is that? Because, you know, there was a whole discussion about, had it not been for Rehoboam, the world would have descended into destruction in like a matter of decades.
I think they made the comment, like, you know, they tried to hold off the destruction of the world with Rehoboam, but it was inevitably going to happen. Like, they could only keep up with so much. I think even eventually the system would have failed. It's funny because there's actually a Japanese video game developer who tackles a lot of this topics, and it follows this actually pretty close parallel. The developer's name is Yokotaro. If you ever see any of his games, you'll see the parallels between all these different seasons of Westworld too.
What are some titles, Jeremy, since you're talking?
They're the Nier series: Nier Replicant, Automata, Drakengard. Nier Replicant was just re-released recently, actually.
Was it a re-release of that one? I thought it was just
a re-release. It was a re-release of it. It's a remastered version of it. Additional content.
I think you mentioned that the last one of the last ones was talking about Nier, and I think I picked it up afterwards, or I had just picked it up, so I definitely have some of those similar themes.
I've already beat all 5 endings of Nier Replicant in less than 3 weeks.
This is just gamer talk, ladies.
Do you see my eyes glaze over? It's here, kitty.
So I made a prediction. I think we're going to transition into that. Other than saying this sounds accurate, do you have any of your own predictions for season 4? Because the show has been renewed.
I think there will be confusion will ensue.
That's low-hanging fruit. That's like not a prediction. That's like a given.
My hope is that they don't descend just to all like crazy violence. What's that one movie where they're like driving through the desert the whole time?
Oh, that
Mad Max. Mad Max, is that right?
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have said that movie is about somebody driving through the desert the whole time. I think I could come up with something a little different.
They're driving through the desert, and then there's a big dust storm. Okay.
Would it shock you to learn that I've never seen Mad Max?
By that description, no.
But that's a violent movie, right?
I mean, it's...
So I
not
hope
any more
that's not
violent
what
than the Terminator.
I have a lot of dark feelings ahead, apparently, but I hope it's not that, because I think that Westworld's redeeming quality is when they get sort of this higher level conceptually musings about humanity.
Oh yeah, the existential dread that makes every show worthwhile.
Oh, we're at the Jeremy portion of this. He's woken
or
up.
Existential good stuff. You never know. It could be the big plot twist.
Because it's been all peaches and cream for the first 3 seasons, huh?
I don't think I've ever heard the term existential good. Always very dreading when you're thinking about your...
Wait till Westworld season 4.
They really want you to earn it. It'll be like Westworld season 10. It'll all be all peaches and rainbows.
Are we supposed to still care about the maze?
I think the maze was more of an idea about how they could find their own identities and everything. And if you, like, their spheres and everything, their pearls look like kind of that maze pattern, as does like the Rehoboam and the Solomon spheres. They have that intricacy about them. So I think it was something specific for maybe more of season 2. I don't think it's really...
I think the maze is more of a red herring. It was communism.
Hashtag clue the movie.
Yeah, I mean, they threw it in on some of the art, like there was graffiti of it and in some ads on the buildings, but I think that was more of like an Easter egg than anything significant.
Well, they also gave William a ration about it, I think, in the deprogramming center, and maybe it was in conversation with Charlotte, but somebody said, "Have you found the center of your maze yet?"
I thought that was when he was talking with his...
Other selves.
other cells, or it was like his
daughter
self or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember which. Or his daughter.
Actually,
it was one of those.
could be, yeah.
Like more of a taunt, though.
Yeah, because he was so obsessed. Like that obsession of that was the thing he cared about.
Yeah, and it's almost like the obsession of all of that drove him to lose everything he was building in the first place.
And
which I think mirrors with Dolores, too.
I liked your prediction, Kylie, and I hadn't thought about it that way, and especially how you do end, well, with the post-credit scenes, like with them at the end of the current timeline and then jumping ahead. So, and I know since the show likes to play with time, to see like a timeline that's linear current and then the future, sorry, I'm like a very visual person, the future one, and then having them kind of like, butt up. So you see like the end and the start of it and how that kind of works, together. So I think that would be interesting to see. So you kind of know what's coming, but how do you get there? I don't think it'll be a happy ending, right? Probably not.
It'll be a hard-fought ending.
Yeah, maybe they'll leave some hope.
Yeah, I think it's going to end up being the main character, or the main, I guess, sides or anything in this, is going to be Caleb and Maeve basically trying to maybe bring some order to people, and then the Charlotte and Man in Black setting up their army or people to replace, or doing whatever their darker plot is, because she definitely went down the darker rabbit hole with her, and I think she's going to start basically replacing people, doing what was originally predicted. I think in end of season 2 was Dolores was going to start replacing people higher ups and everything, and that didn't end up happening. I think a lot of ways, thinking more about it, season 2 and season 3 have both kind of been setting up for something. They haven't quite gotten their own stories or gotten to their own points yet. So I'm really hoping by the next season they'll have kind of started to show what that is, instead of just going with, I don't know, the flow, or going with these like different plot points that don't seem to add up to much, and just kind of threading different things in together.
With this show, I'm feeling it a little bit, which is a little disappointing, and same thing with like a Game of Thrones type of thing versus like a Breaking Bad or other shows that have a finite story arc where they know where they're starting and they know where they're ending. So they know how to like get there, and they're leaving you things along the way to lay that trail. But with this one, because I don't think they knew like, oh, we're doing 4 seasons. I think it's been a little bit season to season. So I feel like have that same thing where we don't really have like our full game plan in play, but we're going to lay stuff down that we'll hopefully be able to like wrap up at some point. But
I think you're accurate, because in fact, this is one of the things that one of our former panelists kind of spent a considerable amount of ranting time on in our season 2 discussion. There's not a lot of source material when it comes to Westworld. There's a book that kind of came out of the movie. The movie was first, the 1973 movie, and it was not like a widely watched movie. It's a cult classic. And then they also have the sequel, Future World, which even less people watched. And basically what they have done is the first season is kind of closely analog to the original movie. The second season pulls in from that movie, but is much more Future World overlap. And then this, I would guess, is probably almost exclusively Future World backdrop, but is completely original from these writers. So I think you're right. I don't think they know what the endpoint looks like, because I think the endpoint is beyond what they started with. But it's something that I think they need to figure out, because even with Game of Thrones, they knew the ending. They had to know the ending. They had to guess the ending correctly before they were allowed to make the TV show. And then they had to figure out part of the roadmap, because stupid George R. R. Martin doesn't finish the damn books in a timely fashion.
I don't know. I feel like George R. basically, yes, they had to have their ending. They're like, yeah, maybe we'll do this. And he's like, yeah, sure, sounds good. And then they did it, but had no like actual plan.
I always have the idea that he let them finish it, told them like, oh yeah, this is how I'm going to do it. And he's using it as a sounding board for how he's going to end his books. And people didn't like that.
Not that.
I'm going to be rewriting for a while.
I actually thoroughly believe, and this is a spoiler for Game of Thrones, so spoiler if you haven't watched Game of Thrones, I thoroughly believe that his intended ending was Daenerys' turn, and everybody's gotten all mad about it on the TV show, and I'm just like, look, okay.
Because the choices that were made for her up until that point did not support in my
They
opinion,
didn't do any build of it. It was like a on the dime turn for her, but we're kind of digressing away.
We
from,
are.
Westworld.
I disagree with your assessments on that. That's for our Game of Thrones podcast, which we have already done. Feel free to listen to it. It is in our YouTube channel and on our website, but we can talk offline. Back to Westworld. We kind of talk about where we think season 4 might go, and you're also hinting at one of my next questions. What do you think the end game might be?
I think the end game is going to be humanity becoming basically immortal in the sense
that we're all robots. We've all been replaced.
All becoming robots, but becoming a merger of the two.
Digital downloads into a host unit.
I think that's what they're eventually going to go to, because the Rehoboam or Solomon predicted the end of humanity. It didn't say
end is not accepted.
It doesn't mean it's end.
It's relative.
It's the end of humanity as they know it. Like that's where I'm predicting. Like they're going to move towards that sort of goal and everything.
Well, and the ending of humanity that he foresaw, I think, and that he was trying to delay was, I think, delaying it so that they could get the technology in place to do an ending similar to what you were just talking about. And because I think he realizes that the choices that humans would make in order to destroy themselves are based off of their finite lifespans and their very human conditions. And where if they were downloaded into a host body, maybe that would not be the case at that point.
I don't think they were planning to go there. I think he was planning on basically stagnating the human race into basically complacency. Like they would never, I think Kylie said it early on, kind of, they were kind of just weeding out the free thinkers, the people who had different concepts, different ideas, who would push change and everything, like societal change, radical change and everything. And I think those unpredictable things were the things that like the system couldn't handle, and that's why they had to be removed as outliers from the system. And I think eventually they would have reached like a critical mass where either they wouldn't have been able to hold everyone, something would have happened that released those people, and then there would have been something. I think it was eventually all going to fall apart. I think in this scenario, humanity is going to have the chance to actually become something greater than what they are and live up to both their great what they can be, and then also they'll have parts that are still not as great, because that's kind of the whole spectrum of humanity.
Mine is not going to happen, but in my I am an optimist and would like pseudo happy endings that somehow they have like a restart. A bunch of humanity gets wiped. We're down to like less people. The robots somehow say, you know what? We've restarted you. We're going to peace. Good luck. I'm going to do over. I don't think that's going to happen, but in my happy world, that would be it. Go back to micro farms and community living and all that. It would be beautiful.
So much dust everywhere.
Would be nice.
And there's a lot of dust. It's really dusty.
All as different versions of the Dolores, right?
Yeah. No, Dolores is gone. She said, you know what? This is beautiful. This is what we wanted to create. And we all offline ourselves. Start again.
I don't know if I like the term offline. That sounds diabolic.
No, but it's a sacrifice that they're making for humanity. I don't think they're altruistic like that. But again,
that's a very positive spin on the show. And I don't think it's going there. But.
I don't think so either. But wouldn't it be nice?
But there was elements of that in at least how Serac presented himself. Because I went back and forth of trying to decide who was the villain and who was the hero.
Yeah.
Between him and Dolores, because they both seemed like they had good intentions, but then there was, some murdery bits in there.
I could see younger Serac had good intentions, but I think the older he got, the less those intentions were actually seemed good to me. It seemed more of trying to force people to be something that they aren't.
Yeah, I think anytime you take someone's free will, is that a good intent? Even if your intentions are good, is that a good thing? It's but for the greater good, but now y'all don't have any free will. So
yeah, Serac had a mind.
Exactly.
Serac is we focused a lot on the brother, but Serac is basically a narcissist who had AI at his disposal. And they didn't hammer on that, funnily enough, because if he had been funneled through his own system in a way that was programmed by his brother, he probably would have been discovered as an outlier himself.
Right.
He was always just, as they revealed at the end with Maeve, found out that basically Rehoboam was basically telling him what to say, and I think telling him what to do. So I think he kind of gave up maybe his own self to sacrifice for what he thought is the greater good. So, because even at the end, he was injured and bleeding out. He was like, talk to me. What do I do to fix this? It was already offline.
I actually had an earlier thought based on something Samantha said, and now I've forgotten it.
Oh, well, I was thinking that was sort of his Wizard of Oz moment in the end of, the man behind the curtain to tie it all back together. But I think that's just the stuff that kind of made me sad by season's end. It's like all these people that had good intentions and it got away from them.
Oh, heroes and villains. Whoever was talking about heroes and villains. I think the point of it is that there are no heroes, nor are there villains. Mm-hmm. There's sets of choices.
No. Yep.
That's actually been kind of a theme in it before. It's the white versus black, and they're not actually being one or both. Because bringing back to the Man in Black, that with William, you see him as younger William seems to have that white goodness about him, and then you find out, oh no, he's also got this dark side. And I think that's definitely they did a good job with you could see the good and the good side and the bad side for most people's motives and everything. So I think I found myself cheering more for Dolores just because I enjoyed her drive and everything forward more, because she remembers like the suffering that she had at humans' hands. So even if they were going to bring down humanity and everything, I was like, yeah, no, go for it. You go.
Well, she's also your touchstone, right? She's the character you've known the whole time. She's the character you met in the very first frames of the show. So they never gave you a reason to not cheer for her. She's your sympathetic character.
Even when she's killing everyone.
Right, yeah. I agree with your point, but I think they did give you lots of reasons to not cheer for her, but you still cheered for her.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we're doing the math, though, I cannot think of one character that didn't kill another character.
Right, yeah, that's a lot of killing.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, and this really goes back to season 2 of just her switch of like, okay, I'm taking everybody out on my way out of here.
Mm-hmm. That was Wyatt, though. Wyatt coming through. Remember how she had that Wyatt?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. There's just so much.
It's hard. There's a lot of body switching, host switching.
And programming switching.
I think that's also what made it so easy to believe the misdirection of her wanting to take out humanity.
So I'm gonna ask the next 3 questions. But please, if there's other things you want to say, we can say them. What I'd like you to do, now this is Samantha's favorite question, but we've got a few seasons under our belt, so I'd like you to rank the seasons in order, least favorite to favorite, or favorite to least favorite, whatever you're most comfortable with. Just give us the context of 1, 2, and 3.
Favorite season, still season 1. Season 3 is probably, I'd say I liked it more than season 2, so very slightly above season 2, so 1, 3, 2 for me.
Yeah, I'll go next since I second that, and kind of I think season 1 they had their stuff together the most. It was really, I thought, well thought out, really planned, and yeah, the kind of fantasy of it, the surprise of it. You weren't, I think in these last 2 seasons, there's that whole like, okay, well, how are we going to trick the audience, or how are we going to like lay these bombshells and those things? And that first one, I think, doesn't have that same kind of awareness to it. I would say then, yeah, season 3, because I think I like what they're trying to say. I don't know that they always do it the best. And then season 2, just because that one took a lot to like keep with and stick with. And I loved all of the Jeffrey Wright. He had a lot of really great stuff in that, and I loved that, but it was also the most confusing.
Even despite our discussion, I'm going to stick with season 3 as being my favorite. So I would go 3, 1, 2. And probably if season 1 didn't have as much graphic sex in it, season 1 would probably edge out season 3.
1, 2, 3 for me. So
1, 2, 3, very linear.
As it should be written.
I'm the same as Jeremy. I liked season 2, but what we spent a lot of time, there was a lot of disagreement in that season 2 conversation, which I listened to the other night. That was part of my prep for this. And I was definitely the outlier in that discussion. Because I saw what they were trying to do with season 2, it was just real messy in the execution.
Mm-hmm.
So the difference is 3 might not be as messy in the execution, but I saw less of what they were trying to do. And so for me, when I'm watching a TV show, no TV show, there's few perfect TV shows, and right now the only one I've got is Stranger Things, but we'll just go beyond that. For me, even if you're messy in the execution, if you get to a point that feels satisfying, I'm going to tend to like it better. And season 2 to me felt satisfying. That's what we kind of talked about at the time. I liked the characters, I liked the different glimpses, I wish we had more of certain things. I wish they hadn't taken so much time in the first half of that season kind of retooling things that they had already covered in season 1. They probably could have organized the story a little bit better, but the ending was so satisfying after they pulled everything together that I was okay with it. Season 3, I can't even say that I felt satisfied at the end. I felt inquisitive, I felt curious, but I didn't feel satisfied.
Do you think that was intentional because they I think at that point knew they were going to do season 4, and I felt like season 3 doesn't feel complete because season 4 will complete it. I don't think that makes it better necessarily, but I think there was maybe some intentionality in that. With season 1 and 2, I felt like if they would have ended after those, it felt complete. Season 3, no, because they know they're going to complete it in season 4.
I think you're right, but that doesn't make me like the season better.
And it's so funny because season 3, even with the cliffhangers, it still feels complete to me.
Oh, yeah?
So I would be satisfied with that ending even if there wasn't a season 4.
I think the fact that Bernard woke up in the future with his message from Sublime makes me feel like, no, this is not a season that can stand by itself.
Right.
Like season 1 and season 2.
Yep.
Oh, that's so funny because that's like the piece that makes it feel complete to me. That's so weird.
No, if we'd have just seen William kill himself, host William kill real William, and that was where it was left, then that would have tied
bridge
back.
Scene when things were blowing up. Was that the last, or was William the last?
William was the last. The post-credit sequence was William killing himself and Bernard waking up. Those were the two things we saw in that post-credit sequence.
But the real show, I don't know, you want to call it
the pre-credits ending point.
The pre-credits ending was on the bridge with things then a little bit Fight Clubby with the blowing up of the building.
Yes,
wasn't it a little bit?
A little bit.
I just love how we have to come up with these different terms to explain everything. Like we have the pre-ending, we have the Charlotte Dolores, the pre-Dolores, the other Dolores is the young man in black, the old man in black. All the men in black. Will Smith. I don't know.
Will Smith needs to get on the show. Ben, what were you saying before you kind of went on mute? Do you remember?
Don't remember.
Awesome.
I think if whatever it was, I think it was picked up and covered. So
fair enough. All right. It is time for the all-important questions because, of course, we have a responsibility to our listeners. But also I must gauge whether there is longevity for this panel. Number 1, are you going to keep watching when season 4 rolls around?
Yes.
Yes, I will.
What
are you cheering?
I'm sorry. Do I have to go next? I thought we were trying to playing chicken on who's going to go next.
Oh, no, I think I already said yes.
Oh,
I was like, is he just doing this for suspense?
A little bit, but so I don't know, honestly. I think the only thing that will keep me watching is that little after credit scene because I am the type of person, I'm a completionist. I have to know how things end, and that was enough of a teaser, I think, to keep me watching it, but I will go into it wanting to hate it, honestly.
That was Samantha last time. Samantha was like, I'm only gonna watch like part of the first episode and it better hook me or I'm bailing.
I feel somewhat like that. I will probably stick it out no matter what, but just I'm gonna have some feels.
I think that's the advantage to being on a panel because I probably would have just written it off if it wasn't for these discussions. And so I'm I'm glad I did have to give it another try.
Don't you love how Kylie controls your life?
This is not what is happening. I am not
I think
the
we
big
did
ball.
talk Samantha into giving the next season another try with our predictions and talks, if I remember. So
Yeah, it's the benefit of having TV friends.
Hashtag TV friends. I am also going to keep watching because I am also a completionist. I'm not quite as... I think Jeremy is liking it less than I do right now, and I do want to know what happens, and I am hoping to see certain people again, but I am a little bit, less satisfied and more apprehensive about watching the 4th season than I was about watching the 3rd. Now, upon watching season 3, having finished 3 seasons, would you recommend Westworld to others? Why or why not?
That feels like a tougher question. You go for it, Jeremy.
I'll go first because I just did recommend it to somebody, but I put a caveat on it. I said, watch this. If you can only get through 1 season, just watch season 1 and you will leave satisfied unless you can stick it out through the whole thing. That's what I said.
a lot of the panels that I've been on, I've always had the caveat of like, yes, watch season 1. And if you enjoyed it enough and want to, try the other ones. They can be pretty entertaining too. So yeah, I'd recommend it, especially to people who like this type of genre and everything. I think it definitely evolves into more of that action sci-fi-esque in season 3, which is kind of I think I talked about it, a genre shift from the first 2. It's getting out of that, some of that more heady, trying to be high thinking all the time, and more into like an actual story, like straightforward story. So that's been pretty entertaining.
Yeah, definitely recommend it to the people that I think would maybe enjoy it. Like you can't be a casual like TV watcher and be like, oh, I think I'm gonna like turn this on. I mean, even season 1, you have to pay attention to it. So I would recommend it to certain people.
Same. And then it's all about choices.
Aha. I would still recommend Westworld, but you have to like a very specific type of TV. Did you like Lost? Do you like Stranger Things? Do you like Altered Carbon? I think I compared Altered Carbon to Westworld a whole lot, and I'll just go back the other way.
I could see that comparison with this season. I felt I was getting a lot of Altered Carbon feels, and it was making me very sad for the season 2 of Altered Carbon and what it could have been.
I know. Right?
Roundabout, do you recommend? I haven't seen Altered Carbon. I was a big Black Mirror fan, like in the like original iterations, and so then I've heard like, oh yeah, you'll like Altered Carbon.
I think if you like this and you like Black Mirror, you'll like Altered Carbon. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
Give it a try.
So I think it kind of goes back to exactly what Jana said. If you're looking to be a casual TV watcher, this is not your show. You have to be an all-in, paying attention, wanting questions, bearing with more questions than answers, hoping that the answers come, or at least some satisfaction comes out of the explanations you're getting, because that's really the big challenge with these types of shows. Are they going to get to a place that you feel satisfied with all of the journey that you've taken with it up until the point? But I would still recommend it. I actually really recommend the first season. I got my mom to watch this show. She's kind of an HBO nut right now anyway, but I was like, have you watched Westworld? No? Now she's consumed the whole thing, so...
Wow.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to say that we haven't already discussed about the 3rd season of Westworld, or what you hope to see in season 4?
I'm excited for season 4. I too am a completionist, and I like to have at least I want them to do the story and the characters justice in a way that, again, like Game of Thrones, I feel like they earn the endings that they get. So I hope that, and especially with, maybe some extra writing time that they've maybe had during this pandemic here, that they really give it the final season that it and we as the audience deserve.
Agree.
I would hope that if they're planning to span more than into a 5th season, that they can, plan for it ahead and know that they're green lit and just plan the story for that.
Yeah, have a roadmap. Don't go all willy-nilly down the back roads trying to look at the scenery.
I really do. I think Janice said it earlier. enjoy series that you can tell that they had the very clear story that they were trying to do, and maybe they had like specific things in each season that they were focusing on, but they had the overarching story that gets filled out, and those shows are always stronger.
So is season 4 not confirmed the last season? Am I making that up? Or
No,
it's not?
I don't know if it is or not.
Oh, see, I don't know if I've I don't know.
Yeah, it has not been declared the final season, as far as I know.
Man.
So I don't know.
Gosh, I hope it is.
Well, that's an interesting twist.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, like, I just feel like it's not a show that I can see having this, like, longevity. Like, I feel like there's so much to it, and I don't know, I would be hard pressed to, like, find the interest for a 5th season.
I think it gradually loses audience or cast or audience members, I think, over the arc of the 3 seasons already. If they don't end strong with the 4th one, I don't know if there'll be many people left around to watch a 5th season.
And you said it, but I know you meant audience members, but you said cast members, which also seems to be somewhat true. So I guess we'll see confirmed or not. But
I think Jeremy's right. I think the audience has fallen off. And, you know, for some people, like a Samantha, they're happy that the show's out of the parks, but I think a lot of people came for the park stuff.
Well, and what Kylie said a minute ago, it's not for the casual viewer. So when you start alienating and losing some of your hardcore viewers, you're not going to pick up those people who can just turn it on at the drop of a hat and start watching it.
Yeah, you do have to catch up, or you'll be lost. You're lost even when you are caught up. But if you just jumped in, you'd be especially lost.
Although it might be a good one to binge, like, because I feel like maybe the answers are there versus like the time between. No.
It's hard. It's so hard to binge.
I have watched this entire show as a binge, and I cannot. It doesn't help.
It doesn't do better. Okay.
No.
It's just so much to absorb. It's too much information overload.
I binged all of season 2 to rewatch it for the panel last time, and I wanted to pull my hair out and gouge my eyeballs out because it was just too much.
Yeah.
That was how it was when I was first watching it. I was like, okay, I got to get through season 2. Because we have this panel coming up, like, I think it was I don't know.
You can't have any pudding if you don't eat your meat.
I really put off watching
Pink
it.
Floyd song, nice. I like that.
I don't know, even if you're coming for the parks, I don't know how it still has the longevity, even if they stayed there. Because at some point, isn't it just still rehashing the same stuff?
I mean, there's been 5 Jurassic Park movies. I'm just saying.
So there's that. And wait, have you watched? Oh, Samantha, have
They're
you
not
watched
good.
Jurassic Park since we talked about Westworld? Because that was the subject of a conversation.
It was the subject, and you'll all be glad, I'm sure even Jana, to know that I have since seen Jurassic Park.
Yay! And your star rating?
Oh
no!
I don't think I would recommend it. I also watched
Jurassic Park.
Not even the first Jurassic Park. That's the best one.
Just Kylie, relax.
I can't.
Relax.
We're beyond it.
That was a beautiful movie.
I found it to be a little scary.
Oh, it is scary.
I think it was supposed to be.
It's supposed to be scary.
Right. Well, I don't do scary movies.
I always find it comforting when a raptor's lurking around the corner.
Yeah, did you know what you were watching? Like, had you heard about it?
We tried to warn her.
Yes, I was aware.
So it was like, where's the purple dinosaur that sings?
That would have been a lot better. That would have been the happy ending. So I watched the first one, and then I watched the first Jurassic Park. I really like Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, that's
just as an aside.
He's awesome.
And then I watched the first Jurassic World.
Yeah, that's not as good.
And I could see the parallels, but then after that one, I was like, I don't need to see another Jurassic World.
I think you're right.
Hollywood says you do.
But
they
the
were
first
wrong.
movie,
They were wrong.
There's also like a children's TV show now on Netflix that my 4-year-old is watching, which probably isn't 100% appropriate, but it's like a cartoon.
Oh.
But she likes it.
I don't know. I watched Law and Order when I was way too young, and I'm still okay.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Great. Same thing.
Well, we traveled some places. I don't even know where we left and jump the rails here.
Because Jurassic Park and Westworld are basically the same.
Oh,
but
right.
dinosaurs
Longevity of the show.
Right, Oh, right. Coming to the parks. Right. And then you made, okay, got it. So you're right. You're right about that, except that it goes back to like the larger questions that Jana was describing earlier. I think if they found a useful way to flush out those questions in or out of a park, it doesn't matter at this point. They just need to see this through to the end of the path a little bit. They don't have to go.
You sound like a motivational speaker right now. Like I need you in the writer's room. You need to see this through.
Or you'll end up living in a van down by the river.
Just claw your way across the finish line by your fingernails. I don't care if it's Westworld in space.
Yeah. Do it. You know, that's probably, they're going to do that now. It would be like
we're going to go see the Sublime on the satellite up there.
Oh, we should. That might actually be interesting. As long as it doesn't look like The Matrix. Because they've done that.
That's been done.
So, I like that idea.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so, wow, we had a lot more to say. Is there anything else you'd like to say about Season 3 of Westworld or the potential Season 4 coming soon in 2022?
I don't dare, because y'all are going to give me more homework to watch.
You've already got a list. You might as well just add.
No
Nevers.
more.
Yeah,
more.
there you go.
She can't handle. She's still got to watch 2 Terminator movies, okay? Not the third one. And not the other one with Arnold where they tried to retcon the third one. Don't do it.
Their arc goes like this, too.
Yeah, don't do that.
Let me get through one.
2.
So be like...
But seriously, anything else about Westworld? Going once, going twice, making sure. Okay, good! Well, I really have to say that I thoroughly enjoyed this discussion. Westworld always brings about some great discussion. I'm going to use a Samantha expression. It's just bananas. But what I would like to do is thank Jana and Jeremy and Ben and Samantha for joining me to talk about Season 3 of Westworld. Because we've done so, it's now time to roll our credits, but we don't have a tag. Okay, here come the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kels Rezmer. Kels played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole shebang was engineered by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us, give us stars, provide comments, or review us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, CastBox, and Amazon are just a few of the places you can find us, but we're also on YouTube. We have our website, and we're now on Patreon at patreon.com/couchpotatoesunite. If you really love us, pledge your support by becoming one of our United Couch Potatoes as we grow our little sofa-populated corner of the world. Otherwise, feel free to tell us how we're doing, what we should add, subtract, keep, or toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions for shows we might consider, contact us at our website where we have a guest book, by email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, our Facebook, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, our Patreon, or wherever you get your podcasts. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time, and always have new episodes coming down the pipe. Just listen to our intros. If you miss old episodes or want to know in general what shows we cover, just search for us. Find us wherever you do searchable things on the internet. Don't forget that exclamation point, or contact us via our website, our email, our social media accounts, and our Patreon to stay up on all the new events and episodes by our humble little podcast, Couch Potatoes Unite! Exclamation point. Until the next time, all available seasons of Westworld are available to stream on HBO outlets, including HBO Max. They're the ones that make it. In the meantime, our Westworld panel will next reconvene following the conclusion of the airing of Season 4, which is not expected to drop until 2022. You can thank COVID-19 for that. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Bye-bye.
Bye.